Hello, this is Carl Deconinck from Brussels Signal live at the Central Square in Brussels, and I have with me a famous Billboard Chris. He's a children's rights activist, and we're here for an interview with him. Chris, why are you in Brussels today?
I'm here with my fabulous friend Lois McClatchy Miller from ADF International because our job is to create awareness about what is undoubtedly the greatest child abuse scandal in the history of modern medicine, the totally insane practice of trying to change the sex of children with puberty blocking drugs, the opposite sex's hormones. And depending where you are in the world, they're doing surgeries on kids as well who've been taught the incredibly abusive notion that they were born in the wrong body just because they might not conform to stereotypes or they might just be struggling in life a little bit.
Are you planning to speak with people, or are you also planning to speak with politicians? Because in Brussels, the European Commission is actually very supportive of those people and sees them as victims that need to be helping, that they need help, and they see people opposing it rather as bullies. So, are you a bully?
Yeah, well, often these kids are victims. A lot of these kids have suffered sexual abuse, statistically. I know the president of the American College of Pediatricians, who's still a practicing pediatrician, estimates about 60% of these kids have been sexually abused. And when you talk to them, as I've done with many of these young detransitioners especially, or you read their stories online, sexual abuse is a very common thing. But a lot of these kids are on the autism spectrum as well. And we know from the Tavistock in England, which has now been shut down, that 35% of the kids had moderate to severe autism. That doesn't include the mild cases. But according to all the studies that have been done, about 70% of these kids have 5 or more coexisting mental health comorbidities. So the question I ask people all the time, and to answer your question, I'm here to talk to people on the street, and I'm meeting with several politicians at the European Parliament. But the thing is, there's no such thing as a transgender child. No one can define what it means. No one can define what it means to have a gender identity. They'll say, well, it's someone whose gender doesn't conform with their sex assigned at birth. That's the left-wing talking point. Well, what's gender? Nobody can tell you. They can't give you a coherent definition apart from sex. But what gender ultimately comes down to is stereotypes. So if a girl is more masculine, if she's a tomboy, as we would say in North America, I don't know if you use that term here, if a girl's more masculine, does that make her a boy? If she wants to climb trees and play in the dirt and play football with the boys, does that make her a boy? Of course not. That's ridiculous. The positive message we should be sending is there's no right or wrong way to be a girl or a boy, that our children are beautiful just as they are. But today there's this movement teaching kids that are struggling, that might have a parent out of the picture. And we know statistically 52% of these kids have a parent that's either deceased or just out of the picture. Personality disorders, parents with borderline personality disorder, eating disorders, and a lot of these kids would grow up to be same-sex attracted. So this is actually the biggest gay conversion therapy movement in the world today as well. And that's the truth. So am I a bully? I would say no. I say I'm trying to protect kids from permanent harm because we shouldn't be turning children into sterilized and maimed lifelong pharmaceutical patients who, according to the president of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, the boys who start on puberty blockers at Tanner stage 2, the beginning of puberty, none of them have even been able to have an orgasm as an adult. So they're also destroying the future intimacy of children who can't possibly conceive of what that even means. So it's literally impossible for a child to give informed consent to these drugs and hormones. But medicine is being pushed by ideology instead of evidence.
An argument often heard by the people proposing the support, between brackets, for those people in their transitioning or in their self-determined identity is that they turn out doing a lot of suicide. What's your argument against that?
Yes, so that's the number one argument. And if we run into any trans activists here today, you'll hear it every time. They'll say that kids will kill themselves if we don't transition them. Why do they say that? They say that because it's the only way you can justify this sort of abuse, is by saying if we don't do it, kids will die. But the data doesn't support it. In December, in the Supreme Court of the United States of America, where they were hearing oral arguments about the ban of child transition in the state of Tennessee, the lawyer for the American Civil Liberties Union, a woman named Chase Strangio, she says she's a man now, she admitted before the Supreme Court that completed suicides, those are the words she used, completed suicides are actually very rare. So the whole thing's just been a lie. It's been used to coerce kids and parents to go along with this. We have only one study into suicide rates among children, and it was done in Finland. They looked at data from the gender clinic in Finland from 1996 to 2019. So 24 years worth of data. And there were only 6 suicides at the gender clinic out of about 2,000 kids over that entire time.
But that's the people who did the gender transition.
They were either wanting to transition or in more recent times they were on the drugs and hormones.
So how about the kids who feel afraid to follow the transition? Don't they have higher rates?
No, they don't. So these were kids that wanted to transition. They weren't all getting the drugs or hormones. But these were the struggling kids who ended up at the gender clinic. And for most of that period of time, they weren't getting the drugs and hormones, which we're being told now, if you don't give them those drugs, they're going to die. And there were 6 suicides. And they compared it to a sample group of 17,000 kids, where there were, I think, 17 suicides out of that group. No, sorry, I think it was 23. But the rates were comparable. And the common denominator between both groups was other mental health struggles. So it's just a lie. It's a really evil, coercive lie to justify harming kids.
And in your experience, saying those things to the broader public, how do the people react to that?
So more than 90% of the population supports this message, especially parents. Parents know that girls are girls and their boys are boys. Kids who are struggling with distress, obviously we need to help them. But the first rule of medicine, the Hippocratic Oath, is to first do no harm. On the first appointment for a lot of these kids today, when they go to a gender clinic, they're being prescribed puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. Depends where you go in the world. In Planned Parenthood, on their very first appointment, basically no questions asked, they're going to be given hormones. It's now a huge moneymaker for them. They know nothing at all about these children, and they're causing irreversible harm. The effects of these drugs and hormones are irreversible. When a girl develops a deep voice and hair all over her body, you can't change that. It's done for life. And when they are given puberty blockers combined with cross-sex hormones, they're sterilizing kids. So now they'll never be able to have a family. And we get doctors like the doctor from where I'm from in British Columbia. Daniel Metzger is his name. He's a pediatrician at the Children's Hospital. And in footage that was leaked last year, he admitted that a lot of these kids, he follows them into their 20s. He's having follow-up appointments. And they get to be 25 and they want to have a family, but they can't because they've been sterilized. And he says so coldly that, yeah, the dog's not doing it for you, is it? As though having a pet is a replacement for a family. And he talks about the regret rate. And he knows it's there, but he keeps doing this anyway. All based on a lie that children are born in the wrong body. Nobody can even tell you what that means. How can you be born in the wrong body? If it's not your body, whose body is it? You are your body. You know, maybe we have a soul as well, but you can't be born in the wrong body. This is what you have. And if you want to be the opposite sex, I can understand why people might want that, but guess what? You can't be the opposite sex. And the only loving message to tell children is that they're perfect just as they are. Gender affirming care, all it affirms is self-hatred. That's all it's doing. The proper term for it is sex denying harm.